Story number 1. The bells in the forest. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time the memory of that Christmas Eve in 1993 resurfaces. My name is Hans Gruber, and what was meant to be a joyous holiday season in our small Austrian village turned into a nightmare that haunts me to this day. Our village, nestled deep within the Austrian Alps, was a picturesque place, especially during winter. The snow-covered rooftops glistened under the soft glow of Christmas lights, and the scent of pine and mulled wine filled the air. My family and I lived in a modest farmhouse on the outskirts, where the dense forest loomed behind our home like a silent guardian. The villagers often spoke of the forest with a mix of reverence and fear, its depths holding secrets that were best left undisturbed. I was 10 years old, eager and curious, with a heart full of the innocence that only childhood can possess. My father worked as a lumberjack, spending long hours in the forest, while my mother managed the household and cared for my younger sister, Anna. Christmas was our favorite time of the year, a season of warmth, togetherness, and the magic that seemed to blanket the world in hope. That particular Christmas Eve was no different. Our home was bustling with activity as we prepared for the festivities. The fireplace crackled merrily, casting a comforting glow across the room. Anna was busy decorating the tree, her laughter echoing as she hung ornaments with practiced ease. My father and I were setting up the nativity scene outside, our breaths visible in the crisp winter air. As night fell, the village transformed into a winter wonderland. Snowflakes danced gracefully from the heavens, covering the ground in a pristine white blanket. We gathered around the dinner table, sharing stories and savoring the hearty meal my mother had prepared. The joy in the room was palpable, each of us basking in the glow of family and tradition. After dinner, we settled into the living room, the tree lights twinkling like stars. My father handed me a small bell, part of our Christmas celebration, a tradition passed down through generations. "Here you go, Hans. Ring this when you feel the spirit of Christmas the strongest," he said, his eyes twinkling with warmth. I took the bell, its cool metal surface smooth beneath my fingers. As I rang it, the cheerful sound filled the room, a symbol of joy and togetherness. We spent the evening singing carols, exchanging gifts, and enjoying each other's company. The night was perfect, or so I thought. It was late, and I had retired to my bedroom, Anna already fast asleep beside me. The house was quiet, the only sound the gentle crackling of the fire and the distant hum of holiday preparations. As I lay in bed, the peacefulness of the night enveloped me, lulling me into a deep, restful sleep. But sleep eluded me that night. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by a faint, melodic sound, a series of distant bells ringing softly. At first, I thought it was the wind playing tricks on me, but the sound was too deliberate, too haunting to dismiss. My heart raced as I strained to listen, the bells repeating a slow, melancholic tune that sent shivers down my spine. Curiosity overcame my fear, and I decided to investigate. Slipping out of bed, I tiptoed to the window, peering into the darkness beyond. The village was bathed in the soft light of the moon, the snow glistening under its silvery glow. Yet, there was something unsettling about the scene, a stillness that felt unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I followed the sound, which seemed to emanate from the forest behind our home. The bells grew louder, their eerie resonance echoing through the night. A sense of dread settled over me, but my curiosity pushed me forward. I grabbed a flashlight and quietly opened my bedroom door, careful not to wake my family. Stepping outside, the cold air bit at my cheeks, and the snow crunched beneath my boots. The forest loomed before me, its dense canopy swallowing the light. The bells seemed to guide me, their haunting melody leading me deeper into the woods. Each step felt heavier, the shadows growing longer and more foreboding. As I ventured further, the bells reached a crescendo, their sound both beautiful and terrifying. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. the snow shimmering around me. In the center stood a figure, a large, hulking man covered in thick fur, his presence both imposing and otherworldly. His eyes glowed a fierce red, piercing through the darkness as he fixed his gaze upon me. Fear rooted me to the spot as the creature moved closer, its heavy footsteps muffled by the snow. "Hans," it whispered, its voice a deep, resonant growl that echoed in my ears. "You shouldn't be here." I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. The creature reached out, this massive hand cold and clammy as it grabbed my shoulder. "Return what is mine," it demanded, the urgency in its voice palpable. Before I could react, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone in the silent clearing. My heart pounded, and I stumbled back towards home, the bells fading into the night as I ran. The forest seemed to close in around me, the path obscured by thick snow and darkness. Panic set in as I realized I was lost, the way back nowhere to be found. Hours passed in what felt like minutes as I wandered through the forest, the memory of the creature's red eyes burning in my mind. My breath came in short gasps, the cold seeping into my bones. Just as despair began to take hold, I heard a faint sound, the jingling of bells, much like the one that had lured me into the woods. With renewed hope, I followed the sound, pushing through the snow and braving the biting cold. The bells led me to a small, abandoned cabin nestled among the trees, its windows dark and lifeless. The door creaked open before I could knock, and I hesitantly stepped inside. The interior was dark and musty, the remnants of a long-abandoned life scattered around. In the center of the room stood an old, dusty table with a single, tarnished bell resting atop it. As I approached, the bells began to ring again, their sound filling the room with an eerie resonance. I reached out to touch the bell, my fingers trembling with fear and anticipation. As soon as I lifted the bell, the room transformed before my eyes. Memories flooded in, visions of a young girl laughing and playing, her joyous spirit filling the space with light. But the vision quickly darkened, showing the girl in distress as she was taken by the creature from the forest. Her tears stained the snow, her pleas echoing in the silent cabin. The memory shifted, revealing the truth behind the creature's demands. It was the spirit of a guardian, bound to protect the forest and its secrets. The bell was his tool, a way to ensure that those who entered did so with pure intentions and respect for the natural world. When Hans had taken the bell from the cabin, he had unknowingly disrupted the balance, binding himself to a cycle of fear and haunting. Realizing the gravity of my actions, I understood what I needed to do. I placed the bell back on the table, my hands steady despite the fear coursing through me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to take you. Please, let me help you find peace." The cabin began to glow with a warm, ethereal light as the spirit appeared before me, his red eyes now soft and sorrowful. "Thank you, Hans," he said, his voice gentle. "You have honored the memories and restored the balance." With those words, the cabin returned to its abandoned state, the heavy atmosphere lifting as the spirit found peace. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, the haunting presence that had plagued me now gone. As I left the cabin, the forest seemed less menacing, the path back to home clear and welcoming. When I finally reached our farmhouse, dawn was breaking, the first light of Christmas morning casting a golden glow over the village. My family was still asleep, unaware of the ordeal I had endured. I climbed back into bed, exhaustion overtaking me as I drifted into a peaceful sleep, free from the nightmares that had haunted me. In the days that followed, the memory of that Christmas Eve lingered, a reminder of the delicate balance between the living and the spirits that linger in forgotten places. The village spoke of the event with a mix of fear and reverence, sharing stories of the guardian who protected the forest and the young boy who had helped him find peace. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas, and the snow continues to fall each winter, blanketing our village in white. The forest remains a place of mystery and beauty, its secrets guarded by the spirit who watches over it. and though I no longer hear the haunting bells ringing in my dreams, the memory of that night remains a testament to the power of respect, remembrance, and the enduring bonds that connect us to the natural world. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind rustles through the trees and the world is hushed in a peaceful slumber, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the forest, his red eyes watching over us with a silent promise. It serves as a comforting reminder that some spirits never truly fade away, their presence a guardian against the darkness that threatens to disrupt the fragile harmony of our lives. And as I sit by the window each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that chilling encounter. The magic of the season is a fragile thing, easily disturbed by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and reverence, we can honor. Story number 2. The man dragged into the snow. I still feel the bite of that Christmas Eve night in 2010, as vivid in my memory as the snowflakes that danced mercilessly in the frigid air. My name is Friedrich Keller, and I've lived all my 65 years in the quiet town of Winterbach, nestled deep within the Bavarian Alps. Winterbach was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where the streets were lined with charming half-timbered houses and the scent of pine from the surrounding forests permeated the air. Christmas was always magical here, a time when the town transformed into a winter wonderland, illuminated by countless lights and filled with the laughter of children. That year, however, the magic was overshadowed by an event that would forever scar my heart and haunt my dreams. It was Christmas Eve, a night I had anticipated with the usual excitement, decorating the tree, baking gingerbread cookies, and spending time with my wife, Greta, and our young son, Lucas, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town. We settled into our nightly routine, unaware of the terror that awaited us. After dinner, Greta suggested a walk to burn off some of the day's indulgences and to enjoy the serene beauty of our snow-covered surroundings. I agreed, eager to share the evening with my family. Bundled up in my warmest coat, we stepped outside, the crunch of our boots the only sound breaking the tranquil silence of Winterbach. The town was alive with holiday cheer. Market stalls adorned with twinkling lights offered everything from handcrafted ornaments to steaming cups of glühwein. Children darted about, their cheeks flushed from the cold, chasing each other in playful abandon. I held Greta's hand tightly, ensuring Lucas stayed close as we meandered through the festive streets. As we approached the outskirts of town, the bustling sounds of the market faded, replaced by the whispering wind and the soft rustle of snow-laden branches. The path led us towards the dense forest that bordered Winterbach, a place we rarely ventured alone, especially on a night as enchanting as Christmas Eve. The moon hung low in the sky, its silvery light casting eerie shadows through the trees. Suddenly, amidst the stillness, I heard a faint, rhythmic thumping sound, like footsteps crunching on fresh snow. My heart quickened, and I glanced around, searching for the source. Greta tightened her grip on my arm, her eyes wide with concern. Lucas tugged at my sleeve, pointing towards a dimly lit path leading deeper into the woods. "Papa, what is that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. I tried to steady my voice, forcing calm into my own racing heart. "I don't know, Lucas. Let's be careful." We cautiously approached the source of the noise, the thumping growing louder with each step. The snow beneath our feet was undisturbed, save for the occasional footprint that seemed too large and oddly shaped to belong to any animal we knew. The path led us to a clearing, illuminated by the pale glow of the moon. There, standing amidst the snow, was a figure unlike anything I had ever seen. It was a man, or something resembling a man, clad in tattered black clothing that seemed to merge with the darkness around him. His stature was unnaturally tall, and his movements were jerky, as if he were being pulled by invisible strings. A large sack was strapped to his back, dragging heavily behind him, leaving deep grooves in the pristine snow. "Do you need help?" I called out, my voice wavering between fear and compassion. The figure paused, and I noticed something disturbing: his face. It was grotesque, a twisted parody of humanity, with elongated features and hollow, sunken eyes that glowed a menacing red. His mouth stretched unnaturally wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth that glimmered ominously in the moonlight. But what truly horrified me was his tongue, long and serpentine, flicking out intermittently in a sinister display. Before I could react, the creature turned abruptly, its eyes locking onto mine with a predatory intensity. "Return what is mine," it hissed, the sound like gravel scraping against stone. Panic surged through me, and without a second thought, I grabbed Greta and Lucas, pulling them towards the safety of our home. The creature moved swiftly, its heavy sack swinging wildly as it pursued us with unnatural speed. We sprinted through the forest, the sound of its malevolent laughter echoing behind us, blending with the howling wind. Branches whipped against our faces, and the snow stung our skin as we desperately navigated the treacherous terrain. My legs burned with exertion, my mind racing to comprehend the nightmare unfolding before me. The path seemed endless, and every step felt like a battle against an unseen force determined to keep us away from the safety of our home. Just when I thought our ordeal would never end, we burst through the edge of the forest, the warm glow of our house welcoming us back. We collapsed onto the porch, breathless and trembling, the creature's laughter fading into the night. I held Greta and Lucas close, trying to soothe their fears as my own began to subside. In the aftermath, the town of Winterbach buzzed with whispers of the strange apparition in the woods. Some dismissed it as a figment of our imagination, fueled by the isolation of the forest and the eerie atmosphere of Christmas Eve. Others believed it to be a restless spirit, a warning of some impending doom. Regardless of the theories, the memory of that night lingered, a dark shadow over the festive season. In the weeks that followed, strange occurrences began to plague our household. Items moved on their own, doors creaked open without cause, and Lucas claimed to see a shadowy figure standing at the foot of his bed, whispering his name. Greta and I tried to reassure him, but the fear in his eyes was all too real. The presence of the creature seemed to extend beyond the forest, a lingering curse that tainted our once happy home. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the history of Winterbach, seeking answers to the mystery of the creature and its demands. My research led me to old town records and newspaper archives, unearthing tales of tragic events and unresolved grief that had long been buried beneath the surface of our idyllic town. It became clear that the creature was not just a random apparition but a manifestation of the town's collective sorrow and forgotten memories. One night, driven by desperation and a need to protect my family, I ventured back into the forest, armed with knowledge and a flickering hope that I could put an end to the haunting. Greta insisted on coming with me, unwilling to let fear tear our family apart. Lucas, too young to understand the full extent of the danger, stayed behind, his innocence a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. We navigated the familiar path, the memory of that Christmas Eve guiding us deeper into the woods. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the promise of snow, the moon casting an ethereal glow that illuminated our way. As we approached the clearing, the presence of the creature was palpable, a dark force that seemed to warp the very air around us. "This is it," I whispered to Greta, my voice barely audible over the rustling of the trees. "We need to confront it, to understand what it wants." The clearing was empty, save for the remnants of the creature's passage, the deep grooves in the snow and the lingering sense of malevolence that hung in the air. I took a deep breath, summoning the courage to face the nightmare that had consumed our lives. "Why are you haunting us?" I called out, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. "What do you want from us?" A cold wind swept through the clearing, and the shadows seemed to come alive, coalescing into the form of the creature. Its eyes glowed brighter, and its grin widened, revealing the full extent of its terrifying maw. "Remember the past," it intoned, the words reverberating through the trees. Honor the memories that have been forgotten. I felt a surge of understanding. The creature was a guardian of the town's unresolved grief, a spectral embodiment of the pain that had been buried and ignored over the years. It was a reminder that the past, no matter how dark, could not be dismissed without consequence. "Help us remember," pleaded, stepping forward despite the fear. "Tell us what we need to do." The creature's eyes softened slightly, a hint of sorrow replacing the malice. "Acknowledge the past," it whispered. "Honor those who have been lost, and keep their memories alive. Only then can the balance be restored." With newfound determination, I vowed to bring the town together, to unearth and honor the forgotten stories that had been buried in the shadows. Greta and I returned home, our mission clear: to heal the wounds of Winterbach and ensure that no spirit would remain restless and tormented. In the months that followed, we organized memorials and storytelling nights, encouraging the townsfolk to share their memories and commemorate those who had passed. The community came together, rekindling old traditions and forging new bonds of unity and understanding. Slowly but surely, the disturbances in our home ceased, the shadows of fear giving way to the warmth of collective healing. On the following Christmas Eve, as we stood on our porch watching the snow fall gently, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The forest no longer seemed menacing, its dark secrets now acknowledged and respected. I glanced up at the sky, the stars twinkling like the hopeful lights of our fair, and whispered a silent thank you to the creature that had taught us the importance of remembering. And sometimes, late at night. Story number 3. The Girl and the Uninvited Guest. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time I recall that Christmas Eve in 2005. My name is Hannah Novak, and what was meant to be a joyous holiday season in our small Czech village turned into a nightmare that haunts me to this day. Our village, nestled deep within the Carpathian Mountains, was a place where everyone knew each other. The streets were lined with quaint houses adorned with twinkling lights and decorated for Christmas, their windows glowing warmly against the biting winter chill. My family lived in a modest, timber-framed home on the outskirts, where the dense forest loomed behind us like a silent, watchful guardian. I was 10 years old, full of the innocent excitement that only a child can possess. My mother, Eva, was busy preparing for the festivities, while my father, Joseph, tended to our small garden, ensuring that we had enough firewood to keep us warm through the long winter nights. My younger sister, Annetta, was busy decorating the Christmas tree, her laughter filling the house with a sense of joy and anticipation. That year, Christmas felt different. Perhaps it was the lingering sadness from our neighbor's tragic accident earlier in the year or the heaviness of my father's recent job loss. But an unspoken tension hung in the air. Regardless, we tried to immerse ourselves in the holiday spirit, hoping to find solace in tradition and togetherness. On Christmas Eve, after a hearty dinner filled with stories and laughter, we gathered around the fireplace, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the room as we exchanged gifts, each present carefully chosen with love and thoughtfulness. As the night deepened, we settled into our usual routine, sipping hot cocoa, singing carols, and sharing dreams for the coming year. As midnight approached, a sense of calm settled over our home. My mother suggested that we all go to bed early, tired from the day's activities. I nodded, eager to drift into the peaceful embrace of sleep, dreaming of snowflakes and holiday magic. But that night, sleep eluded me. The house was quiet, save for the soft crackling of the fire and the occasional distant sound of carolers outside. As I lay in bed, my thoughts wandered, and I felt a strange restlessness creeping over me. Just as I was about to close my eyes, a sudden chill swept through the room, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I sat up, blinking away the remnants of sleep, and tried to shake off the unsettling feeling. It was then that I heard it, a faint, melodic jingling that seemed to echo from the very heart of the forest behind our house. At first, I thought it was the sound of sleigh bells carried by the wind, but there was something eerie about the tune, something that sent shivers down my spine. Curiosity overcame my fear, and I decided to investigate. I quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake my parents or Annetta, and made my way to the window, peering into the darkness. I could just make out the outline of a figure standing near the edge of the forest, its presence almost ghostly against the moonlit backdrop. As I watched, the figure began to move slowly towards our home, the steps deliberate and unhurried. My heart raced as I realized that someone, or something, was approaching. I grabbed my flashlight and hurried downstairs, my small hands trembling as I fumbled with the light. The living room was bathed in the warm glow of the fireplace, the Christmas tree standing tall and decorated with shimmering ornaments. I scanned the room, searching for any sign of the mysterious visitor. But there was nothing out of place. The room was as serene as ever, the peacefulness of the night undisturbed. Just as I was about to return to bed, the doorbell rang, startling me. My parents exchanged puzzled glances before my father went to answer the door. I watched as he opened it, but there was no one there, just the empty street and the silent night. "Must be a prank," my father muttered, shaking his head before closing the door. He returned to the living room, giving me a reassuring smile. "Nothing to worry about, Hannah, just someone passing by." But as soon as he left, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The temperature dropped sharply, and the shadows seemed to grow longer and more menacing. I felt a presence lingering in the air, a coldness that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The faint jingling from the forest returned, louder and more insistent this time. My heart pounded as I realized that the presence was not just in my imagination. It was real, and it was inside our home. I turned to my parents, who were now seated on the couch, looking equally confused and concerned. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. They nodded, their faces pale with worry. "It's probably just the wind," my mother suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. "Let's all go back to bed." But as we gathered our things to head upstairs, the room plunged into darkness. The fireplace went out with a hiss, and the Christmas tree lights dimmed to a haunting glow. The jingling sound morphed into a sinister laughter, echoing through the house with a mocking tone. In the midst of the darkness, a shadowy figure materialized near the window. It was a man dressed in a long black coat, his face obscured by a mask that concealed his features. His eyes glowed an unnatural red, piercing through the darkness as he fixed his gaze on me. "Come inside," he demanded, his voice cold and hollow. "Let me see if you've been good this year." Fear surged through me, freezing me to the spot. I backed away, stumbling over my own feet, as my parents rushed to comfort me. "Stay away from us," my father shouted, trying to protect us from the unseen threat. But the man in black advanced slowly, his presence growing more menacing with each step. "You cannot ignore the past," he whispered, his voice echoing through the room like a haunting refrain. "Remember those who have been forgotten." Desperate to escape, we ran towards the staircase, but the old wooden steps groaned under our weight, as if protesting our frantic escape. The laughter and demands of the masked man chased us upstairs, filling our heads with a cacophony of fear and confusion. Reaching my bedroom, I slammed the door shut, pulling my mother and Annetta inside. We huddled together, trying to find solace in each other's presence as the sounds of the man in black echoed through the house. The temperature remained frigid, our breaths visible in the cold air as we tried to make sense of the terror that had invaded our home. The night dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity as we remained huddled in the darkness. Every creak and whisper seemed to carry the weight of the man's sinister message, his presence a constant reminder that the past cannot be easily forgotten. When dawn finally broke, the house was silent once more. The masked man had vanished, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread and the faint traces of his malevolent presence. As the sun's rays pierced through the curtains, we cautiously emerged from our hiding spot, the first signs of morning light dispelling the shadows of the night. But the evidence of his visit remained. Strange footprints embedded in the freshly fallen snow outside our window and deep scratches etched into the wooden door. The footprints were unlike any we had seen before, too large and oddly shaped to belong to any known animal or person in our village. The scratches were jagged and raw, as if clawed by a creature driven by rage and sorrow. My father knelt beside the footprints, examining them closely. "These aren't human," he murmured, a sense of foreboding settling over him. "We need to be careful." In the days that followed, the memory of that Christmas Eve lingered, a shadow that darkened our once happy home. The fear of the uninvited guest never fully left us, a constant reminder that some pasts refused to stay buried. We became more vigilant, the peace of our village now tinged with an undercurrent of unease. Determined to understand the nature of the haunting, I sought out the village elder, a wise woman named Madame Petra. Her knowledge of local legends and folklore was unparalleled, and I hoped she could provide some insight into the mysterious events that had unfolded. Madame Petra listened intently as I recounted the night's events, her eyes narrowing in contemplation. "What you encountered was no ordinary spirit," she explained, her voice gravelly with age. "He is known as the Forgotten Guardian, a being bound to ensure that the memories of those lost are never erased. On this night, he tests the hearts of those who believe they have moved on too easily, reminding them of the importance of remembrance and honor." "But why us?" I asked, struggling to understand our role in this supernatural occurrence. "Because your family has a history intertwined with the past," Madame Petra replied. "There are stories passed down through generations about a tragic event that occurred on Christmas Eve many years ago, an event that your family was deeply affected by. The Guardian seeks to ensure that the memories of those who suffered are not forgotten." Determined to put an end to the haunting, I returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. I shared Madame Petra's insights with my parents, and together, we embarked on a mission to honor the memories of the past and appease the Forgotten Guardian. We began by documenting our family's history, preserving old photographs, letters, and stories that had long been tucked away in the corners of our home. We organized a memorial service on the following Christmas Eve, inviting neighbors and friends to join us in remembering those who had been lost. The evening was filled with heartfelt speeches, the lighting of candles, and the sharing of cherished memories. As we honored our ancestors, the air in the house felt lighter, the oppressive presence that had once haunted us beginning to dissipate. As midnight approached, we gathered once more in the living room, the Christmas tree casting a warm glow over the room. We stood together, holding hands, our hearts united in remembrance and love. I rang the small bell my father had given me, its clear tone resonating through the house, a symbol of hope and renewal. The room remained silent, the heaviness lifting as we reaffirmed our commitment to remember and honor the past. It was then that I felt a gentle warmth enveloping us, a sense of peace settling over our home. The air was filled with the faint sound of laughter, not the mocking tones of the Guardian, but the joyous echoes of loved ones long gone. As the clock struck midnight, a figure appeared near the window, no longer menacing, but serene. It was the man in black, his features softened, the red eyes now gentle pools of understanding. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. "You have honored the memories, and now, peace can be found." With those words, he faded into the night, the lingering traces of his presence replaced by a comforting stillness. The fear that had once consumed our home was gone, replaced by a profound sense of connection and love. We knew that the Guardian had found the closure he sought, and in doing so, had freed us from the shadows of the past. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas Eve, and the memory of the Forgotten Guardian remains a poignant reminder of the importance of remembrance and honor. Every holiday season, Our family continues to celebrate with love and gratitude, ensuring that the stories of those who came before us are never forgotten. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and the snow blankets the ground in silence, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure at the edge of the forest, a silent guardian watching over us, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the bonds that connect us to those we have lost. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that haunting night. The magic of the season is a fragile thing, easily disturbed by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of family bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. Story number 4. The Shadow of Krampus. I still remember that December night in 2017 as vividly as if it happened yesterday. The crisp alpine air, the scent of mulled wine and roasted chestnuts, and the haunting melodies of traditional Austrian folk songs still echo in my mind. My name is Eric Weber, and what was supposed to be a joyous celebration of Christmas traditions turned into a nightmarish encounter that forever changed my perception of folklore and the supernatural. Our town, Hinterglemm, nestled in the heart of Austria's mountainous region, was renowned for its elaborate Christmas festivals. Every year, the highlight was the Krampuslauf, a parade where participants dressed as Krampus, the fearsome companion of Saint Nicholas, roamed the streets to scare misbehaving children. It was a spectacle that drew crowds from neighboring villages and beyond, blending fear and festivity in a way that only our culture could. I had been eagerly anticipating this year's festival. My friends and I had spent weeks crafting our Krampus costumes, complete with horns, furs, and menacing masks. There was something exhilarating about embodying the legend's dark counterpart, the embodiment of punishment and fear. This year, however, something felt different, a palpable tension that lingered in the air, as if the spirits of past Krampus runs were watching us with wary eyes. The night of the parade was colder than usual, the sky a deep indigo sprinkled with stars. The streets of Hinterglemm were transformed into a labyrinth of lights and shadows, the festive decorations shimmering against the darkness. As we donned our costumes, the excitement in our group was contagious. We joined the throngs of onlookers, our presence adding to the eerie ambience that the Krampuslauf was known for. The parade began with traditional fanfare, the rhythmic beating of drums and the blaring of horns signaling the arrival of the Krampus figures. We marched alongside dozens of other costumed participants, our steps synchronized with the booming music. The sight of families huddled together, children clutching their parents' hands, and the flickering lights of the stalls created a surreal backdrop that was both enchanting and unsettling. About halfway through the procession, a hush fell over the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. Someone was missing. Hans Berger, a local carpenter and one of our closest friends, had disappeared. We hadn't seen him participate this year. Instead, he had volunteered to help organize the event. His absence was unusual, and a sense of unease began to creep into the festive atmosphere. As the parade wound its way through the town square, we heard frantic calls for Hans. Panic rippled through the crowd as people searched the streets, their festive cheer replaced by desperate anxiety. I glanced around, my eyes searching for any sign of him, but all I saw were the shadows cast by the illuminated stalls and the costumed participants still advancing through the night. That's when it happened. A figure in a Krampus costume, noticeably larger and more imposing than the rest, emerged from the darkness at the edge of the parade route. Unlike the others, this Krampus had an aura of malevolence that set him apart. His mask was more intricate, with sharper teeth and deeper, more hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the souls of those who met his gaze. The large Krampus began to stalk through the crowd, his presence commanding attention. People began to back away, fear etched on their faces as they realized this was no ordinary participant. The atmosphere shifted from festive to foreboding as the sinister figure made his way towards us. Suddenly, Amidst the chaos, Hans vanished. One moment he was there, helping to coordinate the search efforts, and the next, he was gone. Desperation surged through me as I called out his name, but the only response was the unsettling laughter that seemed to emanate from the large Krampus. The creature turned its attention towards me, and I felt a chill run down my spine as his eyes bore into mine. I watched in horror as the Krampus approached, each step deliberate and slow, dragging a large sack behind him. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a path for his relentless advance. My heart raced as I realized there was no escape. No one was safe from his wrath. The stories of Krampus were meant to frighten children into good behavior. But this was something far more sinister. Before I could react, the Krampus reached out a clawed hand towards me. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, as the creature loomed over me, his breath cold against my face. "You were never good enough," he hissed, his voice a guttural growl that resonated with ancient anger. Suddenly, a blinding light pierced the darkness, and the Krampus recoiled, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. The crowd erupted into chaos, people screaming and scrambling to find safety. I lay there on the cold ground, trembling, my mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. Hans was nowhere to be found, and the large Krampus had vanished without a trace. The aftermath of the parade was a scene of disarray, people mourning their lost friend, emergency services arriving to investigate, and the festive decorations now serving as a grim reminder of the night's horrors. In the days that followed, the town was abuzz with theories and speculations. Some believed it was a case of mistaken identity, while others whispered about curses and ancient spirits awakened by the festivities. The legend of Krampus had always been a part of our cultural heritage, but no one had ever experienced anything like what happened that night. Haunted by the disappearance of Hans and the eerie encounter with the large Krampus, I became obsessed with uncovering the truth. I delved into old folklore, poring over ancient texts and speaking with local historians who knew the darkest secrets of our traditions. What I discovered was a tale far more terrifying than anything I had imagined. According to the legends, Krampus was not merely a mythical figure designed to scare children into behaving. In some old stories, Krampus was a vengeful spirit, a guardian of balance between good and evil, punishing those who had slipped through the cracks of morality. These tales spoke of powerful Krampuses who could cross the veil between the living and the dead, exacting revenge on those who had wronged them in life. The large Krampus I had encountered seemed to embody this ancient wrath, a spectral entity fueled by a deep-seated grudge against the town and its inhabitants. The disappearance of Hans was not a random act of violence but a targeted punishment, a message to those who had forgotten the true meaning of the festival. Determined to save Hans and protect our town from further harm, I sought out the assistance of Madame Ingrid, a local witch renowned for her knowledge of the supernatural. Her presence was both comforting and commanding, her eyes holding the wisdom of generations past. She listened intently as I recounted the events of that fateful night, nodding thoughtfully as I described the malevolent Krampus. "This is no ordinary apparition," she concluded, her voice steady. "The Krampus you encountered is an ancient spirit, bound by rituals long forgotten. To appease him and restore balance, we must perform a sacred ceremony, honoring both the spirit of Krampus and the memory of those he has taken." Madame Ingrid and I began preparing for the ceremony, gathering the necessary items and researching the precise rituals required to quell the wrath of the vengeful Krampus. The night before the ceremony, the town was eerily quiet, the festive lights dimmed as if sensing the impending confrontation. On the night of the ceremony, we gathered in the heart of the forest, the same area where the large Krampus had appeared. The moon cast a pale light through the dense canopy, and the air was thick with anticipation. Villagers joined us, their faces a mix of fear and hope as we formed a circle around a sacred altar adorned with candles, herbs, and symbols of protection. Madame Ingrid began the incantations, her voice resonating with power and authority. I placed my hand on the altar, feeling the warmth of the candles and the strength of our collective resolve. As the final words of the ritual left her lips, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing the candles and plunging us into darkness. A chilling silence enveloped us, broken only by the distant howl of a wolf. Suddenly, the large Krampus emerged from the shadows, his red eyes burning with fury. The ground trembled as he advanced, his presence overwhelming and terrifying. "You dare challenge me?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the trees. "You forget the ancient pacts, the balance I uphold. Now, you shall face the consequences." Madame Ingrid stepped forward, her eyes unwavering. "We honor your spirit, Krampus. We seek balance and protection, not vengeance. Release Hans and return peace to our town." The Krampus paused, his gaze shifting between us, the weight of centuries of tradition evident in his expression. "Balance must be maintained," he declared, "but perhaps your sincerity grants you mercy." With a final, piercing gaze, the large Krampus reached out a clawed hand towards the altar. A brilliant light emanated from his touch, engulfing us in a blinding glow. The ground shook violently, and the forest seemed to come alive with the spirits of past Krampuses, their presence a reminder of the delicate equilibrium between light and darkness. When the light faded, the Krampus was gone, and an overwhelming sense of peace settled over the clearing. Madame Ingrid and I exchanged relieved glances. Knowing that the ritual had been successful, we returned to the town, hopeful that Hans would be found and that the curse had been lifted. Days later, Hans was discovered in the forest, unconscious but alive. He had no memory of what had transpired, but his safe return brought immense relief to our community. The town of Hinterglemm slowly returned to its festive spirit, the shadows of that Christmas Eve beginning to dissipate. Yet, the lessons we learned that night remained ingrained in our hearts. The true meaning of the Krampuslauf was not merely to scare children into good behavior but to honor the ancient traditions and the spirits that protect our balance. We vowed to remember the events of 2017, ensuring that our celebrations would always respect the line between festivity and the supernatural. Years have passed since that harrowing Christmas, and the memory of the large Krampus serves as a reminder of the thin veil between our world and the realms beyond. Sometimes, late at night, when the winds howl through the mountains and the snow blankets the ground in silence, I catch a glimpse of red eyes watching from the shadows, a silent guardian, ensuring that the balance remains undisturbed. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of family and the glow of festive lights, I hold onto the lessons learned from that night. The shadow of Krampus may linger in our folklore, but with respect, remembrance, and unity, we can honor the past and protect our present from the darkness that seeks to reclaim it. Story number 5. The Midnight Knock. I still wake up in the dead of night every Christmas, heart pounding, memories flooding back like the relentless snowfall outside our Slovenian home. My name is Elena Novak, and what was supposed to be a magical Christmas Eve in 1999 turned into a nightmare that still haunts me today. Our house stood on the outskirts of a small village nestled within the Carpathian Mountains, a picturesque setting that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. The snow-covered rooftops glistened under the soft glow of Christmas lights, and the scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air. My husband, Mark, our 10-year-old son, Luca, and I had always cherished our Christmas traditions, decorating the tree, baking gingerbread cookies, and gathering around the fireplace to exchange gifts and share stories. That year, however, there was an undercurrent of unease that neither Mark nor I could quite place. Perhaps it was the recent passing of my own father or the lingering stress of Luca's upcoming school exams. But something felt different. Despite the festive decorations and the cheerful atmosphere, an unspoken tension hung in the air, making the house feel both warm and strangely hollow. On Christmas Eve, after a hearty dinner filled with laughter and conversation, we settled into our usual routine. Luca was busy unwrapping his gifts, his eyes wide with excitement, while Mark and I enjoyed a quiet moment sipping hot cocoa by the fire. The clock ticked towards midnight, the final hours of the year slipping away in a haze of joy and anticipation. As the hands of the clock approached 12, a serene silence enveloped our home. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the occasional creak of the old wooden house settling into the night. We glanced at each other, smiles lingering on our faces, content in the shared peace of the moment. Then, exactly at midnight, a loud, forceful knock echoed through the house, shaking the very foundation of our home. My heart skipped a beat as I exchanged a worried glance with Mark. Luca looked up from his gifts, confusion and fear flickering in his innocent eyes. "Who could that be at this hour?" I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. Mark got up, walking towards the front door with a mix of curiosity and caution. As he approached, the knocking resumed, louder and more insistent. "Mark, maybe it's someone who needs help," I suggested, trying to steady my racing heart. He reached for the door, hesitating for a moment before peeking through the peephole. His face paled as he stepped back, motioning for me to join him. "Elena, I don't recognize that voice. It sounded strange." Before we could discuss further, a hoarse, guttural voice rang out from the other side of the door, sending chills down my spine. "Come in to check the children." Mark and I stood frozen, exchanging bewildered and frightened looks. Luca was now standing behind us, clutching his gift tightly. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice small and shaky. "Yes, Luca," Mark replied, his tone trying to mask the fear creeping into his voice. "We need to be careful." I nodded, stepping back from the door. "We should call the police." Mark. But before we could reach for the phone, the knocking intensified, growing louder and more frantic. "Come in to check the children," the voice demanded again, this time with a desperate edge that made my blood run cold. Panic surged through me. "Mark, let's stay inside. Don't open the door." He nodded, but the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. We retreated to the safety of the living room, Luca sitting between us, his eyes darting nervously around the room. The knocking continued, now accompanied by the eerie silence of an unresponsive house. Minutes felt like hours as the relentless knocking echoed through every room. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The cheerful decorations now seemed mocking, the twinkling lights casting long, sinister shadows that danced menacingly across the walls. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the knocking ceased. The room was plunged into an oppressive silence, broken only by the soft ticking of the clock. We sat there, breathing heavily, hearts pounding in our chests, unsure of what to do next. The next morning, we woke to find our house in disarray. Objects were moved from their usual places, and the front door bore deep, jagged claw marks etched into the wooden surface. Luca was the first to notice them, his eyes wide with fear. "Look, Mama, look at the door," he exclaimed, pointing to the damage. Mark and I rushed to the front of the house, staring in disbelief at the mutilated door. The claw marks were fresh, no doubt inflicted during the intense knocking the night before. There was no sign of forced entry or any indication of who or what had done this. "We need to report this," Mark said, his voice tinged with frustration and fear. "Someone tried to break in, but there's no one outside." I nodded, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Maybe it was someone who didn't know us, or something else. As the day progressed, the memory of the midnight knocking haunted us. Neighbors whispered theories, some suggesting it was a prank, while others believed it was a spirit or entity drawn to our home for reasons unknown. The town of Winterdorf was steeped in folklore, tales of spirits and mythical creatures that roamed the forests during the long winter nights. But nothing like this had ever happened before. Determined to find answers, I began researching the history of our village, diving into old records and local legends. It was then that I stumbled upon a chilling story from decades past. a tale of a mysterious figure known as the Midnight Watcher, a malevolent spirit said to haunt the homes of families who had lost their children tragically. According to the legend, the Midnight Watcher was a vengeful entity, drawn to the sorrow and unresolved grief of bereaved parents. It would manifest as a cloaked figure, demanding entry to ensure the protection of the children who had passed on, punishing those who dared to ignore its presence. The spirit was believed to be a dark guardian, ensuring that the memories of the lost children remained honored and never forgotten. The more I read, the more connections I saw between our experience and the legend. Had we unknowingly triggered the Midnight Watcher's wrath? Was the entity drawn to us because of a past tragedy or something we had yet to uncover? As Christmas approached, the unease in our home grew. Mark and I grew increasingly paranoid, always feeling like we were being watched, our every move scrutinized by unseen eyes. Luca, once a happy and carefree child, became withdrawn, his fear of the night deepening with each passing day. One evening, as we sat huddled together in the living room, the room plunged into darkness. The lights flickered and died, leaving us enveloped in an oppressive blackness. I could hear Luca's quiet sobs, and Mark's tense breathing filled the silence. Then, just as suddenly as it had gone out, the lights snapped back on. The room was unchanged, but the atmosphere was heavy with a sense of foreboding. I felt a cold draft brush past me, and the sound of soft, muffled footsteps echoed through the house. "Mark, Luca," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Did you hear that?" Mark nodded, standing up cautiously. "It's probably just the wind. Let's check the windows and doors. Make sure everything's secure." As we moved through the house, checking each window and door, Luca clung to my side, his small hand gripping mine tightly. The sense of being watched intensified, a malevolent presence lurking just beyond the edges of our perception. We reached the front door, finding no signs of tampering beyond the claw marks we had seen the day before. But as I turned to go back inside, I caught sight of something that froze me to the core, a shadowy figure standing at the edge of our property, partially obscured by the dense trees that bordered our yard. The figure was tall and imposing, dressed in a dark cloak that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. His face was hidden behind a mask, the details obscured, but his presence was undeniably sinister. He stood motionless, watching us with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Why won't you leave us alone?" I demanded, stepping forward despite the fear gripping my heart. "What do you want from us?" The figure didn't respond, his silence more terrifying than any words could have been. Instead, he raised a hand, and a deep, guttural growl echoed through the night, sending tremors through the ground beneath our feet. Suddenly, the air around us grew frigid, the temperature dropping sharply as if we had stepped into an icebox. Luca shivered uncontrollably, pulling me closer to Mark. The presence of the Midnight Watcher was undeniable, and I knew we were dealing with something far beyond our understanding. "We need to leave," Mark whispered urgently. "Get Luca inside. I'll handle this." But before I could react, the figure lunged forward, his movement unnaturally swift. I felt a surge of protective instinct, pulling Luca into my arms as Mark stood his ground, trying to fend off the entity with whatever strength he could muster. The Midnight Watcher advanced, his shadow swallowing the light around him. I could feel his malevolent intent, a dark energy that seemed to drain the life from the room. Desperate, I clung to Luca, refusing to let go as fear threatened to consume me. Just as the entity was about to breach our defenses, a blinding flash of light erupted from within the house, momentarily disorienting the spirit. The Midnight Watcher recoiled, his form wavering, before dissipating into the night, leaving us breathless and shaken. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, the oppressive darkness giving way to the soft glow of dawn. The immediate threat had passed, but the aftermath left us deeply scarred. Luca was trembling in my arms, and Mark's face was pale, eyes haunted by the night's terror. "We need to seek help," I said, my voice trembling. This is beyond us. Mark nodded, wrapping his arm around me and gently placing Luca on the ground. Together, we made our way back inside, the warmth of our home now a stark contrast to the frigid encounter outside. The lingering fear made it difficult to settle back into the safety of our daily lives. But we knew we had to find a way to protect our family from the relentless presence of the Midnight Watcher. In the days that followed, we reached out to the local priest, Father Jacob, hoping his knowledge of ancient rites and spiritual protection could offer us some respite. He listened intently as we recounted our experience, his expression grave and thoughtful. There are rituals that can help shield your home from malevolent spirits, Father Jacob explained, his voice steady and reassuring. But it requires the entire family's participation and unwavering faith. Determined to reclaim our peace, we agreed to perform the necessary rites. We began by cleansing our home, burning sage and sprinkling holy water in every room, reciting prayers of protection and remembrance. Father Jacob guided us through each step, his presence a comforting anchor amidst the storm of our fears. As we worked, I couldn't help but reflect on the legend of the Midnight Watcher. The idea that our grief and unresolved sorrow had summoned this vengeful spirit was both terrifying and enlightening. It became clear that, to truly banish the entity, we needed to confront our own pain and honor the memories that had long been buried. One evening, as the sun set and the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Father Jacob led us in a final, powerful ritual. We stood together in the living room, holding hands tightly as he chanted ancient incantations. The air was thick with anticipation, the room humming with a potent energy that felt both sacred and dangerous. As Father Jacob's voice rose in a crescendo, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, replaced by a sense of calm and unity. The shadows that had once seemed so threatening now felt like mere illusions, easily dispelled by the collective strength of our family and the divine protection we had invoked. A sudden gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and leaving us in peaceful darkness. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of release, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from our souls. The Midnight Watcher's presence was gone, replaced by the gentle warmth of our love and the unwavering bond that held us together. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that harrowing night began to fade, replaced by the comfort of our restored home and the joy of renewed traditions. Luca slowly regained his playful spirit, and the tension that had plagued our household dissipated, leaving behind a lasting sense of peace. But the experience left an indelible mark on our family. We had faced the darkness together, confronting our fears and honoring the memories that had threatened to tear us apart. The legend of the Midnight Watcher became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the power of grief and the importance of remembrance. Every Christmas Eve since then, we gather around the fireplace, sharing stories of that night and the lessons we learned. The crackling flames and the warmth of our home serve as a testament to our resilience and the enduring strength of family bonds. We light candles in honor of those who have been lost, ensuring that their memories remain alive and cherished, never to be forgotten. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure at the edge of our property, a silent guardian watching over us, ensuring that the balance remains undisturbed. It serves as a comforting reminder that some spirits find peace when their memories are honored, and that our love and unity can protect us from the darkness that seeks to intrude. And as I sit by the window each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that fateful night. The magic of the season is fragile, easily shattered by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of family bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. Story number 6. The Disappeared Child. I still remember the biting cold of that Christmas Eve in 1988, a night etched into my memory with shadows that refused to fade. My name is Lucas Muller, and I grew up in the secluded village of Eichenwald, nestled deep within the Swiss Alps. Eichenwald was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where traditions were sacred, and where the line between folklore and reality blurred beneath the blanket of snow. Our village was picturesque in winter, with wooden chalets adorned with twinkling lights and smoke curling from chimneys into the starry night. Christmas was a time of joy and unity, a season that brought out the best in our tight-knit community. Children's laughter echoed through the streets as they built snowmen and sled down the hills, their cheeks flushed with excitement. But that year, something felt different. There was an undercurrent of unease that lingered in the air, an unspoken tension that none of us could quite place. Perhaps it was the harsh winter that had left us isolated, or the growing whispers of old legends resurfacing as the days grew shorter and the nights longer. Regardless, the festive spirit was tinged with a hint of foreboding. It was on Christmas Eve that the unthinkable happened. Johann, my 10-year-old neighbor, had always been a mischievous child, often finding himself in trouble for stealing trinkets from the village shops. His parents, struggling with the loss of his older brother to a hunting accident years before, were overprotective, desperate to keep Johann safe from the dangers they believed lurked beyond our borders. As the sun set, casting long shadows over Eichenwald, Johann was nowhere to be seen. My parents, like the rest of the village, assumed he was inside, perhaps restless after a day of mischief. But as the night deepened, our fears grew. Johann had never missed Christmas Eve. If anything, he was more excited than ever. Around midnight, the village was plunged into darkness as a fierce snowstorm swept in, the howling winds tearing through the trees and rattling the shutters of our homes. We huddled together, candles flickering against the storm, praying for it to pass. It was then that the legend of Krampus resurfaced, a tale our grandparents had told us in hushed tones. Krampus, the dark counterpart to St. Nicholas, was said to roam the forests during the Yuletide, punishing misbehaving children who had slipped through the cracks of Christmas cheer. The villagers dismissed it as mere folklore, a story to scare children into good behavior. But that night, as the storm raged outside, the line between myth and reality seemed to blur. A loud crash echoed through the village, followed by panicked screams. We rushed to the window, hearts pounding, only to see nothing but swirling snow and the oppressive darkness of the storm. It was then that we heard it, a series of heavy footsteps crunching through the snow, growing louder and more deliberate. The village square, usually bustling with festive activity, was eerily silent. The footsteps stopped at the edge of the forest, where the trees stood tall and ominous against the stormy sky. We watched in horror as a hulking figure emerged from the darkness, clad in a dark cloak and carrying a large sack slung over his shoulder. His presence was menacing, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light that seemed to pierce through the storm. "Johann," he called out, his voice a deep, resonant growl that sent chills down our spines. "Come with me. It's time you learned your lesson." Before anyone could react, Johann appeared from the shadows, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. He didn't resist, his small frame shivering uncontrollably as he followed the ominous figure into the forest. We were frozen in place, unable to comprehend what we were witnessing. The figure disappeared as quickly as he had arrived, leaving us in a state of stunned disbelief. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a serene blanket of snow. But the peace was shattered by the discovery of Johann's disappearance. Panic swept through the village as search parties combed the forests, calling out his name into the silent woods. Days turned into a week, and there was no sign of him. The only evidence left behind were deep claw marks etched into our wooden doors and the unsettling absence of Johann's playful presence. A week later, against all odds, Johann was found at the edge of the forest, lying in the snow in a state of shock and confusion. His clothes were torn, and his body bore the marks of a struggle. When he regained consciousness, all he could remember was the haunting voice and the terrifying figure of Krampus. He repeated the same chilling phrase over and over. "He will return. The village was thrown into a state of fear and uncertainty. Was Johann's disappearance a result of his own mischief? Or had the old legends come to life? The claw marks on our doors became a constant reminder of the night we lost one of our own to the shadows of the forest. Determined to uncover the truth, I took it upon myself to delve deeper into the legend of Krampus. I spent countless nights in the village library, poring over old texts and records, searching for any clue that could explain the events of that fateful Christmas Eve. The more I learned, the more I realized that the legend was more than just a simple tale. It was a powerful force tied to the very soul of our village. I reached out to the village elder, Frau Schmidt, a woman whose knowledge of our traditions was unparalleled. She listened intently as I recounted the events, her expression grave and thoughtful. Krampus is not just a mythical figure, she explained, her voice steady. He embodies the dark side of our traditions, a reminder that not all is joyous and light. Johann's behavior that year had disturbed the balance we strive to maintain. Krampus serves as both a guardian and a punisher, ensuring that the spirits of the past are respected and remembered. With Frau Schmidt's guidance, I began to understand that our village had long ago made a pact with Krampus, a pact that maintained the delicate balance between light and dark, joy and sorrow. When that balance was disrupted, as it was with Johann's misbehavior, Krampus would step in to restore it, sometimes through terrifying means. Determined to prevent further tragedies, I proposed a renewal of the old traditions, a ceremony to honor Krampus and reaffirm our commitment to the pact. The villagers were hesitant at first, their fears still fresh, but the lingering sense of unease left little choice. We agreed to hold the ceremony on the following Christmas Eve, hoping that it would appease Krampus and prevent any further disturbances. As the months passed, I worked tirelessly to prepare for the ceremony, collaborating with Frau Schmidt and other elders to ensure that every detail was meticulously planned. We crafted intricate decorations, prepared offerings, and studied the ancient rituals that had kept our village safe for generations. The anticipation of the ceremony brought a sense of hope and unity to our community, a collective effort to heal the wounds left by Johann's disappearance. Christmas Eve arrived, and the village was once again adorned with twinkling lights and festive decorations. The air was filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension as we gathered in the village square, the same place where Johann had been taken. The night was clear, the stars shining brightly against the inky sky, a stark contrast to the stormy chaos of the previous year. The ceremony began with prayers and offerings, our voices intertwining with the sounds of traditional carols. Frau Schmidt led us through the rituals, her presence a calming force amidst the lingering fears. We lit candles to honor Johann and the spirits of those who had been lost, our collective hopes rising with each flickering flame. As the clock struck midnight, a heavy silence fell over the square. The air grew colder, and a sense of anticipation hung in the air. Suddenly, the same haunting voice echoed through the night, sending chills down our spines. "Remember the past," it intoned, the words reverberating through the village. "Honor the memories that have been forgotten." A figure emerged from the shadows, his presence both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It was Krampus, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, his presence commanding respect and fear. He approached the center of the square, his eyes meeting ours with an intensity that made our hearts race. "We have honored your presence," I spoke, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "We have remembered and respected the past. Please, find peace and leave our village in safety." Krampus stood silently, his gaze unwavering. For what felt like an eternity, we waited, the weight of our actions pressing down upon us. Then, slowly, he nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement and acceptance. "Balance is restored," he declared, his voice a deep, resonant echo. "Honor the past, and protect the future." With those words, Krampus vanished into the night, his presence dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a sense of warmth and relief that enveloped the village. We had fulfilled our duty, honoring the old traditions and ensuring the safety of our community. In the days that followed, life in Eichenwald began to return to normal. The fear that had once gripped our hearts was replaced by a renewed sense of unity and respect for the traditions that had kept us safe for generations. Johann's disappearance remained a somber reminder of the balance we must maintain, a testament to the power of folklore and the spirits that guard our village. Years have passed since that harrowing Christmas Eve, but the memory of Krampus and the lessons we learned remain ingrained in our hearts. Every Christmas, we gather to honor our past, ensuring that the spirits of those we've lost are remembered and respected. The traditions we uphold are not just rituals of celebration, but sacred promises to maintain the delicate balance between light and darkness. But sometimes, late at night, when the snow blankets the village in silence and the stars shimmer like distant beacons, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure at the edge of the forest, a silent guardian watching over us, ensuring that the pact remains unbroken. It serves as a comforting reminder that some spirits never truly fade away, their presence a guardian against the darkness that threatens to disrupt the fragile harmony of our lives. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that fateful night. The magic of the season is fragile, easily shattered by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of community bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. Story number 7. Krampus's Return. The snow had begun to fall just as the first light of Christmas morning peeked over the horizon, casting a soft glow on our modest home in the heart of Hungary. My name is Anna Kovacs, and I still remember that Christmas of 2015 as if it were yesterday, a night that transformed our lives from warmth and joy to fear and uncertainty. Our family had always cherished Christmas traditions. My husband, Miklos, and I worked hard throughout the year to create a festive atmosphere for our 2 children, Esther and Laszlo. Decorating the tree, baking cookies, and exchanging gifts were the highlights of our holiday season. But that year, something unsettling disrupted our peaceful routine. It began when we woke up to find a large, ornately wrapped box placed carefully at our doorstep. There was no note, no indication of who might have sent it. Intrigued yet cautious, we brought the box inside, the children's excitement barely contained as they speculated about the mysterious gift. As we unwrapped the package, a chill ran down my spine. Inside was a meticulously carved wooden statue of Krampus, the dark companion of Saint Nicholas from Alpine folklore. His menacing face, complete with sharp horns and a sinister grin, stared back at us. Alongside the statue was a small, handwritten note that read, "If you are not good, I will return." My husband and I exchanged uneasy glances. Krampus was a figure from the stories my grandmother used to tell, an entity who punished naughty children during the Christmas season. It was a tale meant to instill good behavior, not something we expected to encounter in real life. "Maybe it's just a prank," Miklos suggested, trying to lighten the mood as our children marveled at the craftsmanship of the statue. "Someone thought it would be funny." I nodded, though my unease lingered. We decided to place the statue on the mantelpiece, thinking it would be a quirky addition to our Christmas decorations. That night, as the family settled down for bed, the statue seemed to watch us with an unnerving intensity. At first, nothing unusual happened. The days passed with the usual holiday cheer, shopping for gifts, decorating, and spending time together. But about 3 days after the mysterious package arrived, strange things began to occur. It started with small disturbances. Items moved from their usual places. Shadows seemed to linger longer than they should, and an overall feeling of being watched settled over our home. Esther and Laszlo became more irritable, claiming they felt a bad presence in their rooms. One evening, as Miklos and I sat by the fireplace discussing the unsettling changes, we heard a loud thud from the kitchen, Rushing to investigate, we found no one there, but the Krampus statue was missing from the mantel. Panic set in as we realized someone or something had taken it. Determined to find answers, Miklos decided to burn the statue, hoping to rid our home of the ominous presence. We gathered in the backyard, the cold night air biting at our skin as we lit the fire. The wooden figure cracked and began to smolder, the heat distorting its once menacing features. Relieved, we returned indoors, believing the nightmare was over. However, our peace was short-lived. Exactly 1 week after we destroyed the statue, we woke up to find an identical Krampus figure sitting at our doorstep. The same chilling note beside it: "If you are not good, I will return." Fear and confusion overwhelmed us. How could the statue reappear so quickly? We had thought burning it would end whatever curse it brought, but it seemed to defy our attempts to banish it. The children were terrified, insisting that Krampus was now haunting our home. As the days progressed, the disturbances escalated. Nightmares plagued our sleep, filled with visions of Krampus chasing us through dark, snowy forests. The statue's presence seemed to grow stronger. Even though we had destroyed it, objects levitated, doors slammed shut on their own, and an oppressive darkness settled over our home every night. Desperate for answers, I reached out to my grandmother, who had a deep knowledge of our family's folklore. She listened intently as I recounted our ordeal, her eyes widening with concern. "Krampus is not just a legend," she explained gravely. "He is a powerful spirit, bound by ancient pacts. If disturbed, he will return to reclaim what is his, especially during the time of Yuletide. Burning the statue only enrages him further." Determined to protect my family, we sought the help of a local priest, Father Istvan, known for his expertise in dealing with spiritual disturbances. During our meeting, he listened to our story and performed a series of blessings and protective rites around our home. "These measures will offer some protection," he assured us, his voice calm and authoritative. "But you must show Krampus that you honor the true spirit of Christmas: kindness, generosity, and compassion. Only then can his anger be appeased." Following Father Istvan's guidance, we redoubled our efforts to embody the virtues he spoke of. We volunteered at the local shelter, donated to those in need, and made a conscious effort to spread joy and kindness throughout our community. Slowly, the disturbances began to subside, the darkness lifting as we embraced the true meaning of the season. However, just as we began to feel secure, the unthinkable happened. On Christmas Day, a figure in a dark cloak appeared at our doorstep once more. His presence was even more imposing than before, his red eyes burning with an unholy fire. He extended a clawed hand towards me, his voice a low, menacing growl. "You have not learned your lesson," he snarled. "The balance must be restored." Terrified, I reached for Father Istvan, who had been with us throughout the ordeal. Together, we stood our ground, facing the wrath of Krampus head-on. The priest began chanting protective prayers, the words filling the air with a sense of power and determination. Krampus lunged forward, his claws reaching towards us, but the strength of our combined resolve held him at bay. With each prayer, his form began to waver, the malevolent energy around him dissipating. Finally, with a final, anguished scream, Krampus vanished, his presence erased from our home. Exhausted but victorious, we knew the battle was won, but the memory of Krampus's wrath would linger forever. The experience taught us the importance of honoring traditions and the true spirit of Christmas, ensuring that we would never take for granted the delicate balance between light and darkness. Years have passed since that harrowing Christmas, and our home remains a sanctuary of warmth and love. The statue of Krampus is now a symbol of resilience, a reminder of the night we faced our fears and emerged stronger. Each year, as we celebrate the holiday season, we honor those who have been lost and cherish the bonds that keep us united. But sometimes, late at night, when the snow blankets the world in silence and the wind whispers through the trees, I catch a fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure at the edge of our yard, a silent guardian, watching over us, ensuring that the balance remains unbroken. It serves as a comforting reminder that some spirits linger, protecting us from the darkness that seeks to disrupt our peace. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that chilling night. The magic of the season is fragile, easily shattered by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of family bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek.